Hello and welcome back to another episode of the On the Sideline podcast of Jackson and Kyle. I am joined here, as always, by the man who said he will not return to the OTS podcast unless the general manager of this podcast is fired. Kyle, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing very good actually because I've found this new obsession in Formula One based off the Netflix show, and I've basically been consuming it nonstop. So I had a great race this morning that I got to watch, and it's been good stuff. So make sure to tune in to Jackson Kruger Sports for upcoming Formula One videos.
That's right. We're going to completely rework everything. It'll all be Formula One. I just feel like I'm too afraid that I'll get too into it. I have barely enough time as is. I can't get into another sport, Kyle.
If you're going to get into one sport, I recommend it because it's pretty easy to pick up on. There's 3 teams that win. It's very analytically based, and it's great strategy. It's a very interesting sport, I think, overall for racing sports, where I feel like NASCAR is kind of like this glorified bumper cars, and it's like 400 laps long. This race today, 66 laps, very analytically based. They were like, statistically, the person who wins pole is going to win the race. The person who won pole won the race, mainly because Team Red Bull made a mistake. Very analytically based. It's a great sport.
All right. Well, you sold it well. Here's what we're going to do for today's show. We got several topics. We're going to do a couple of drafts. You know, we love our drafts here on the Sideline podcast, including teams that missed the playoffs in 2020 but could make it in 2021, coaches who are on the hot seat in the 2021 season, rookie quarterbacks who are in the best position to succeed. We're also going to get into a little bit of baseball towards the end of the show, but we'll cover all the football first because we know most of you guys are football fans. But we got to start it off with the thumbnail image, what's going on with Aaron Rodgers. And I've noticed the brand thing is the different one than what we usually go with. I think there we go. What a disaster that was. Yes. So this should be, it's an interesting article, interesting thought. And to be honest, I feel like there's a lot of misinformation going on there. Like I was doing research before this, and it seems like there's a lot of stuff that I just don't know where it's exactly come from. So I want to start off with just talking a little bit about what we know and what we don't know, because I think there's a little bit of stuff that people might not be fully aware of. So the first thing I want to talk about is the whole Aaron Rodgers wants the GM, Brian Gutekunst, to be fired. That's not really been reported. So here's what happened. Let me just explain this, and then we'll get your thoughts, and we'll start talking more about it. So there was a Bleacher Report article that was titled "Report: Aaron Rodgers won't return to Packers unless GM Brian Gutekunst is fired." But the source they used under that was from Charles Robinson, who said this was in Robinson's article about Aaron Rodgers and the team. Said, "Ask if anything could be done to repair the relationship between Rodgers and the team." The source said a reconciliation may not be possible if Gutekunst remains, and that team president Mark Murphy is aware of the quarterback's feelings about the general manager. So it wasn't really saying that Rodgers was like giving this ultimatum. It was kind of just saying Rodgers is unsure if they can work together continuously if he's still the GM, which is, to me, that's a notable difference. And Robinson himself even retweeted a tweet saying he never said outright Rodgers said fire Gutekunst. It was more of maybe there's clearly a rift there, but not an outright ultimatum. So I think that's important to say before we get too far into this.
Yeah, so I think there's one thing. By the way, Clay Burris, yes, I did see the fight live. Anyway, so anyway, I think the thing I have to look at this is there's a lot of reports, and of course, Schefter dropped the bombshell like a week after his initial bombshell that this was like months of reporting and months of information coming into him. It wasn't like Rodgers said, because everyone thought initially when this came out on the draft day that Rodgers and his camp basically just fed all this information saying he wants out. And that was the perceived thought because everybody got information and released information around the same exact time. That was the interesting thing about it. And then Schefter's like, oh yeah, I've been getting all this information for months. This isn't anything new. And it was just very weird. I think the clear thing that is set is that he's not happy. And to me, it really just seems like he's not happy because they drafted a quarterback still. I mean, honestly, because they're talking about the job the GM has done and what this Packers organization has done. Like, I don't know. I look at these quarterbacks and like some of the guys who have complained and wanted to leave, like Carson Palmer wanted to leave the Bengals. I get that. I would want to
Right.
leave the Bengals too. Deshaun Watson, for football specific purposes, I understood when he wants to leave Houston. For Tom Brady to want to leave New England, where he's basically saying, look, I've taken a pay cut for the last 15 years, and all of a sudden now my pay cut's being used to throw to Jacoby Myers and N'Keal Harry. This isn't working for me. I completely understand wanting to leave that situation. I don't really understand why he wants to leave this situation. I think that, he's thrown to a guy who's in the debate as the number one receiver in football. He's thrown to a running back, or he has a running back who I think made the Pro Bowl last year. If not, he's pretty darn good and wanted an extension and got it for him. He's throwing to a tight end who many thought was a Pro Bowl snub last year. And he has an offensive line that's constantly rated as one of the best, even though I think it's a little overrated. I don't think it's a bad offensive line. And what better football situation for a quarterback is going to be than where he's at right now?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of good stuff there. I mean, so you mentioned Carson Palmer. One of the things that's part of why this has been brought up, notably Aaron Rodgers had the same agent that Carson Palmer had. So maybe that's kind of adding some smoke on this fire of that. I agree. The Packers, it hasn't been a bad situation currently. Let's talk about Adam Schefter. You brought him up. I want to talk about that for a second. We should kind of maybe put a little bit of blame on Adam Schefter, who has had some poor timing. Yeah, I mean, listen, I was frustrated. I remember when Adam Schefter reported that Andrew Luck wanted to retire when Andrew Luck was in the middle of a game, so he couldn't, the whole booing at the Colts thing happened. He certainly will pick his moments to say, and he picked this moment. He said on an interview with the Dan Patrick, he said, I can guarantee you Aaron Rodgers did not want that out there on draft day. So that's kind of saying something. So Schefter was the one who decided to put it out on draft day. And he said, there's not a source. No new information came in this morning. It was just an accumulation of information. So that's what he chose. And when asked if Aaron Rodgers wants out, he said, or when asked if he knows if Aaron Rodgers wants out, he had a very odd response to it. And he kind of stuttered for a bit and then said, do you really know anything? But I have been told he doesn't want to be there by many people, which is a little bit cryptic. To me, it tells me that, okay, there's clearly some smoke here, but it does feel like him and a good amount of other reporters are kind of building it up to be a little bit more than it actually is. And I do think there is something there, but it's kind of building it up to some degree, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. Because the thing is so early in the offseason, I had mentioned I think we were talking about the Colts and should they trade for a guy like when? Should they go after a free agent or should they move up in the draft to try and get a guy that they have basically the near perfect roster or a Super Bowl contending roster and needed that quarterback, similar to Tampa Bay a couple of years ago, obviously before Brady. And I think the thing I said with the Colts was I felt like Rodgers was in play next year potentially because there has been this talk and this chatter. I mean, this has basically gone on since draft last year, right? Basically, since Jordan Love got picked, this has been a conversation point. And I just don't understand quite where he's coming from, and I don't understand quite what the reports are, and I don't know what the end game is here. What is the end game for Rodgers? Is it to fire the entire front office, or is that just people talking? I just don't understand really the point of it.
Well, so let's talk about, again, it does seem like it's the Gutekunst. I don't know how Brian, we'll call him Brian. That's
Brian the GM.
Brian the GM. So I went back and I kind of looked at sort of his decision-making since 2018 when he got the job. Because it seems like that's the clear, two clear things. That seems like that's Rodgers' main rift. And one of the first decisions that Brian did was cutting Jordy Nelson, who obviously I can see why Rodgers might not love that. And, you look at Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski. Gronkowski wasn't necessarily what he once was, but he still had some, key plays with Brady due to just chemistry. Even forget about when he actually was able to make plays and get open. He also, there's the Jake Kumerow situation where people were sort of making fun of that. Like, really, you're mad for Jake Kumerow getting cut? But, Aaron, at the same time, I kind of get that. Aaron Rodgers, the day before in a press conference, talked up Kumerow, saying Kumerow is really good. Kumerow, I'm looking forward to him being our number 3 receiver. And Rodgers was planning on him being a key part of the offense. And then without even his knowledge, all of a sudden Kumarow's cut. I can understand some frustration. And if you look at just what actually happened, there has been some misses and there's been some hits. I would say that Brian has been a very hot and cold general manager. He drafted Jair Alexander. Great hit. Alexander's awesome. He also got nothing else in that 2018 draft, really. He drafted Rashawn Gary over Brian Burns and Montez Sweat. Gary looks interesting to me. He's not Brian Burns or Montez Sweat. He at least hasn't been up until this point. He did then later in the draft get Darnell Savage and Ellington Jenkins. So 2 big wins later in that draft. Had an extra first round pick, but sure. Then also the following draft drafted to Jordan Love and AJ Dillon. I don't defend that. I think that win now, don't try to build for the future. Some people say no, build for the future. That's not me. And the one other thing I'll say is hiring Matt LaFleur has absolutely worked out. So he nailed that one as well. So there is some, I think, rightful criticisms of Brian, the GM, that, if we expect Aaron Rodgers to be perfect, couldn't we criticize the GM for he hasn't been as good as Aaron Rodgers has been at quarterback?
Yeah. And then, you just bring all that up in succession, though. Doesn't that just kind of sound like the month of a GM or the life of a GM? You hit some and you miss some. I mean, Jason Light just won a Super Bowl. Has Jason Light been a good general manager in your opinion?
I would say he's been hot and cold. I wouldn't say he's been a perfect GM. You're right. You're right. But I wouldn't say that he's like a fantastic GM. I would still say that he's hot and cold. But the one thing that Jason Light did was once he saw he had a Super Bowl contending roster, he went all in and tried to get it. You can't say that about Green Bay.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. I think if you redid that draft, that'd be the one thing. And it seems like it's coming back to kind of what I think. If he's actually unhappy, to me, just from a football playing situation, it just seems like he's unhappy that they drafted a quarterback still. Because this is a really good football situation still. They still got to improve the defense. I still think it's getting better. Obviously, the thing about the playoffs is if you have one weakness in that defense, it's going to get exposed by a good team over and over again. And that was Kevin King in the NFC Championship game. Plus, a couple bad turnovers, that kind of thing also changed a lot of it. But I just feel like from a football playing situation, a guy who has made 2 NFC Championships games in a row with a really good offense, really good playmakers around him, I think that it's ridiculous to say that this is a terrible football situation. You need to get out.
No, you're absolutely right. It's a great situation. It's better than I think he would be better here than in Denver. I think that he'd be better here than most. I mean, they're a championship contender. If Green Bay won the Super Bowl next year, and if Aaron Rodgers stays and Green Bay wins the Super Bowl next year, I don't think anybody would be shocked by that. I think that absolutely seems logical. My point is that you can still, if you're Aaron Rodgers, say, well, we had a pretty good team when you got here, and you made some head-scratching decisions. You did go out and get draft my replacement. You bet against me, and I won the MVP. And now you're still, you could trade Jordan Love now and try to get more traffic, but you're still betting against me. I think he kind of feels like, clearly Brian, the GM, thought that Rodgers was on his way out. That's why he drafted Jordan Love. He thought they had 1 or 2 years of Aaron Rodgers. All of a sudden, Aaron Rodgers wins MVP, and all of his decisions in that 2020 draft have looked very stupid.
Yeah, and the thing is too is I feel like based on his, not necessarily that he was bad in the 2019 or whatever it was, not that he was bad in 2019 or 2018, but the progression was going down at that point. Like, it wasn't controversial to take a quarterback. I say I wouldn't have taken one in the first round, but I don't think it was a crazy thing to decide to take a quarterback at that point because A, you need a backup, and B, I thought Aaron Rodgers' numbers had dipped slightly. Then obviously he has a fantastic 2020 and wins MVP, so that changes everything. But yeah, I mean, I just think overall, I think it's a weird situation. But at the end of the day, like, I'm still 1,000% betting on him playing in Green Bay next year, right?
Yeah, 100% I am talking about. I think that it's playing, AJ Hawk said, I think there is a 0% chance he is retiring. And to me, that's how he would not play, is he would retire. I don't think I don't think Denver is an option because Kyle Shanahan apparently before the draft called to see if Aaron Rodgers was available just because he said, well, if this rumor is out there, I should probably, pick up the phone and just make sure I do my due diligence. And it was kind of like, yeah, this we're not trading him. So I think that what could happen if Aaron Rodgers really wants out, he would have to threaten retirement. If he does retire, he's going to have to sign a $30 million paycheck. Not just as in that's not how much money he's leaving on the table. He's going to have to pay Green Bay back that much in signing bonus for retiring, which I don't see him wanting to do. And so it seems unlikely, especially when all Aaron Rodgers has to do is play one more year, and then basically Green Bay can just get rid of him, just trade him then, and they'd be much more willing to do it then. So I think that I could see them coming to some sort of deal of saying like, I'm going to stay here 1 year and then we're done. But yeah, I mean, I think that there is very little, I'd say less than 1% chance Aaron Rodgers is not the day one quarterback for Green Bay.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Just a very interesting situation. And it seems like a lot of bitching. That's honestly what it feels like.
Well, and the most bizarre thing about this, which is I do think there probably is some, when there's this much smoke, there's usually at least some fire. And I do feel like if this was all BS, then I feel like Rodgers would have come out and said, like, yeah, I don't know what they're getting it from. So there probably is. The rift part is probably true. There's the report that he was referring to Brian, the GM, as Jerry Krause, who is the Bulls GM. You're a bigger basketball fan than I am. You can get into the details of that, but I just know that he was disliked by Michael Jordan as the Bulls GM. So it seems like logical that there is some sort of rift here, but again, I don't know how he's gonna. I don't know if Rodgers is gonna give up so much money just to leave.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. For the Jerry Krause comparison, I'm assuming that he's comparing the idea of getting Jordan Love to Jerry Krause wanting to rebuild the Bulls after their third straight NBA title. I mean, I don't really get it because it's still a good team, but I guess I understand part of it because it's like, oh, we're ready to move on even though we're almost at a Super Bowl. But he hasn't won 3 straight championships. So I mean, I don't know. It's a very interesting situation. I think that, like I said, though, I said this earlier in the offseason when we were talking about other teams. I think he's in play next year. I think there's a play next year where he gets moved. But I don't think it's happening this year. I think they're running it back with this team and seeing what happens. And I don't think he's going to want to, just leave I don't honestly see leaving for Jeopardy as a realistic scenario. I just don't think that makes any sense.
Yeah, I agree. Although apparently from what I've read, people seem to like Aaron Rodgers, what he's done on Jeopardy. So maybe there's some, I don't know, maybe Jeopardy wants him, but I mean,
maybe he's good, but at the same time, probably good for an athlete. Like, I think Joe Buck's about to do this, and I think Joe Buck would be a fun Jeopardy host, and I think there's going to be other better Jeopardy hosts who are used to hosting TV shows.
All I know is I went on the Jeopardy Reddit as part of my research for this to see what the Jeopardy fans were talking about. They were having a very good time with Aaron Rodgers as a host, it seemed that those aren't necessarily just football fans.
Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, but we got a super chat.
Super chat coming from a Packers fan. I feel like the Packers are going to try to treat us like a last dance or a last dance season, and you can call it a GM Goot. I'm not sure what that means, but thank you for your money. Also, I had one more thought about this before we move on. My last thought is, could we see teams like we all made fun of Denver? I made fun of Carolina for not really having a clear back. Carolina.
That was me.
Yeah, let that go. Carolina, they sort of they said we're going to go all in with Sam Darnold. Denver seemingly is going all in with Teddy Bridgewater or Drew Lock. Is it possible they don't want a long-term option because they're just saying, hey, next year Rodgers might be available? Kind of like what you see in the NBA. Teams try to clear up some salary cap. Could we see a team try to position themselves for the Aaron Rodgers sweepstakes?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some teams in play with that, and Carolina is interesting because what's his name? The new owner, David Tepper, has basically said he's willing to do anything to get a franchise quarterback. And they made some trades with Darnold, but is Darnold a franchise quarterback? I mean, I'm inclined to say no. I know you're kind of inclined to feel the same way so far, based off of what we've seen. So that could be an interesting. That could be an interesting wrinkle if Carolina gets in play there. So I think there are going to be some teams that are looking at this, like, especially, I don't know if the NFL is really built that way, where they're looking at it kind of like that through the microcosm of could this quarterback be available? But I think if they hit the point where there's like a team that's like out of the playoff picture, are they going to start to say, can we gear this team towards getting a quarterback? Because the one thing I've continued to say about NFL this offseason, creating cap space isn't really that difficult. Unless you're even the New Orleans Saints managed to do it. They just had negative cap space to begin with. I just don't think creating cap space is that hard.
Yeah. I agree, but I think again, for one more year, I think Green Bay just they say, okay, what you're really going to go? I think he stays. Any final thoughts on this?
No, I think we just about covered everything. We hit the reports. We hit the why does he want to leave, all that kind of stuff. So I think we're good.
Also, I guess one more thing. What would be the most fun option? Best case scenario.
The Bears.
The Bears, that would be good. How about the Vikings?
Vikings would be fun. He'd just pull a Brett Favre.
Yeah, I like that. Patriots would be good. I think Patriots just let everyone just sort of burn the world to the ground.
What about John Gruden?
I think that would almost be a bit of the fights that would happen with Aaron Rodgers and John Gruden would be incredible.
Yeah, I think that would be the interesting part. I know Carr is your guy, and I think Aaron Rodgers though is a different story.
I mean, that would be fun. Yeah, there's a couple interesting ones. But yeah, honestly, best case scenario might just be he stays at the Packers. Like that, less fun, but like I feel like for what's going to give this the most entertainment value next year,
I'd still pick the Bears.
Okay. Well, there we go. All right. Let's move on now. We got some still very fun topics to talk about. Let's do some dark horse teams now. So these are going to be, we're going to do draft style. We're just going to do 6 because we've done 10 before, but that takes too long. 6 teams that missed the playoffs in 2020 that could make it in 2021. So, Kyle, how about you wait 1 second. We got a super chat. We'll do the super chat and then we'll end it with the Rodgers stuff. Best case scenario Rodgers goes to the Patriots and they play Tom Brady and the Buccaneers in the Super. That is best case scenario. That's right. Riley got it right there.
That'd be an interesting game.
That would be incredible.
So
also that would probably make for an all-time great on the sideline podcast after that Super Bowl. One of us celebrating a Super Bowl win, the other one devastated as a Super Bowl loss.
I think we'd both be drunk for the episode, no matter what happened.
Yes. All right. So, Kyle, you want to start this draft off?
All right. So just to clarify, so anyone who, has forgotten a little bit from last year, the 49ers, the Cardinals, the Falcons, the Panthers, the Vikings, the Lions, the Eagles, the Cowboys, the Giants, the Broncos, the Chargers, the Raiders, the Jaguars, the Texans, the Bengals, the Jets, the Patriots, and the Dolphins are all on the board here. We're picking 6 of these teams most likely to make the playoffs. So the Bengals are out for both of us. I'm going with the San Francisco 49ers as the number 1 pick. I feel like this is a very easy pick. This team had a season from hell last year. It's going to come back with a clean bill of health now. It was literally an Emmanuel Sanders catch away from winning a Super Bowl 2 years ago. And there's still a pretty good amount of that team on the roster. Plus, I think it can get even better. You're getting another year of Deebo Samuel experience under your belt. You're getting another year of Brandon Ayuk under your belt with some more experience. And he's going to get his first full offseason after showing, real flashes of electric play at that number 2 receiver spot. George Kittle is going to be healthy. You have 2 quarterbacks now that you can trust, because I do feel like this team, if it had competent backup quarterback play, probably gets that other wild card spot from Chicago. They didn't have competent backup quarterback play. They just had bad quarterback play once Garoppolo went down. So I'm going 49ers as my number 1 team to make the playoffs that missed last year.
That's a great pick. It's also, they were number 1 on my board as well. I'm with you. And I agree. Their injuries were such a big factor last year. I think their offensive line very underrated. Their weak spot is still probably, I think, Mike McGowaney, who ended up finishing 19th on Pro Football Focus's offensive line rankings. So that's not really that big of a weak spot. Trey Lance could be very interesting. Or if they go Jimmy Garoppolo, and Nick Bosa being back, I just think makes their defense run. The only thing I feel like it will be interested to see Javon Kinlaw. Will Javon Kinlaw take that second-year defensive tackle jump that we see some defensive tackles take? So I'm 100% with you. Number 1, I absolutely agree.
Yeah, and Kinlaw's another one who's interesting, who I thought showed flashes, and I think has potential. I really liked him out of the draft too, so it'll be interesting to see. Do you feel like Sherman's back on this team by August? Do you think he's trying? Is this like a veteran move to try and miss OTAs, basically?
Oh, maybe that's a good one. I don't know. I don't. I mean, I feel like if he really wants to miss OTAs that badly, he could just work that into the contract. I feel like it's weird of him. I thought for sure he was going to be. I said he's a Raider. That just he feels like a Raider. That just seems logical. But it's kind of interesting with him too, where I almost feel like there is kind of a limit on where he can go. I don't think he wants to go to a team that's going to make him a man corner. So maybe he does stay with San Francisco. I could see it happening. I'm a little surprised he hasn't been signed already.
Yeah, unless I missed something. I don't think he's been signed. But yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I'm confident that I think it is pretty much basically it's the best fit for him. I think overall because he has played in that system for basically his whole career. So I just think it's the best scenario for him is just to go back there and run it back with that team. And, I think it's the best case scenario for San Francisco as well, because I still think they need a corner.
Yeah, I think that's good. Number two, how about your New England Patriots? I'm going to go to Patriots here. I mean, you look at the value, just the value they added in free agency, getting an entire new receiving core, getting guys like Matt Judon, really revamping their defense, their defensive line. I thought they had an incredible draft. They have a lot more pieces. I think their defense could be actually pretty good next year. And on top of this, they get Mac Jones, a potential quarterback of the future, who I think can play now. To me, Mac Jones isn't a project. I wouldn't be shocked at all. Honestly, I could see a scenario where Mac Jones is the day one starter. I don't think he will, but I think that there's a chance. And Cam Newton, he's still like a top 20 quarterback. He's not spectacular, but he's pretty good. So I think a better running game now. Get Ramondre Stevenson. I think, and obviously their awesome offensive line and the best coach of all time. That certainly helps. So I'm going to go Patriots at 2.
Yeah, I mean, team was number 2 on my list too. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think just by default, the team got better this offseason. So, and it's just because there was guys who shouldn't have been starting players starting for this team last year. They're not going to be asked to start. They're going to be in specific roles now this year. I'm excited to see these tight ends, even if it's an overpay for a lot of these guys. I still think it's good players. So that's the good thing I have going for it. And I'm just excited to see these guys on the football field. And I'm interested to see Mac Jones because I do think he's going to play sooner than we think after watching Cam last year. I know he didn't have weapons, but weapons don't help you like not bounce the ball 5 years in front of your receiver. We'll see what happens. Maybe, because he looked good really before COVID. And then after he had COVID, it started to slip. Maybe that helps him. We'll see what happens with the Patriots, but I do feel confident that this team can get a wild card spot in the AFC.
Yeah, it seems like it's become a legitimate attack on Mac Jones that he looks like he's out of shape. Like I think that if Mac Jones looked like a professional athlete, people would be a lot more higher on how he's going to be as a quarterback.
Yeah, if he lost like 20 pounds, he probably would have been a top 5 pick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, maybe the 49ers would have selected him at number 3.
Yeah, so I mean, it's interesting. I'm excited for Mac Jones. We were both high on him. We've talked about that. We did the draft to death, so we don't have to go too far into it. Mm-hmm. But number 3, so I had a couple teams higher than this team that I think they're going to be better next season than this team. But I just think that because of the division they're in, you know what I'm talking about, America's favorite division, that's the NFC East. I mean, by default, I should pick one of these teams, right? So I'm going to go with I feel like there's 2 options here. So I feel like you have the best quarterback with Dak Prescott and the Cowboys, and you have the best team, which is the Giants, even though you're dealing with Daniel Jones and his fumble issues and his Daniel Jones issues. I'm still going to pick the Giants here. I do think that they're going to make the playoffs, and I think they're just a better team than the Cowboys. And while I think Washington's still the favorite to win the NFC East, I think they made enough moves here that I think that they're a pretty good team, and I think that they can get I see a realistic scenario where this team gets 8 or 9 wins based on the players that they added, the players that they already have. I see a scenario where this team can get 9 wins. It's a lot harder to see that for the Cowboys this season, so I'm going with the Giants.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I considered the Giants. They were on my list. They ended up not making even my honorable mentions. A large part of it is I feel like their offense, I'm concerned about their offensive line and their quarterback, which that's like, half of your offense, more than half your offense on every snap. And, that's concerning to me that's an issue. I also think their defense can be a bit too star dependent and kind of scheme dependent, where you look at their roster, it's not like you see a lot of like talented guys. It's more so just guys who kind of, fit the system well, which sometimes doesn't carry over year to year, sometimes does. It's just a bit, I don't know if I can call it that much of a criticism, but it does feel like I wonder how much can that carry over year to year. I had Dallas as my second team for that division, sort of sleeper, but I do agree with the logic of taking an NFC East team just because it'll be an easier division.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting because, I have questions about Daniel Jones. We've talked about that verbatim. I also have questions about Washington's quarterback situation. If Ryan Fitzpatrick, we celebrate the good Ryan Fitzpatrick like he's the greatest quarterback ever, but part of the Fitz magic is it runs out, basically every other year, and then all of a sudden it looks really bad sometimes. Would you be shocked if all of a sudden Fitzpatrick is, hurting his team more than helping him next year? Because that's kind of who he is.
Well, no, but I think at least for Washington, they have a much better offensive line and I think a better defense. So that's why I would still be. But again, we can't pick Washington because they've already won the division. So
yeah, exactly. So I just think that there's an opening for an NFC East team. It's just going to depend on, I do feel like this is a 3-team crapshoot because I don't have any faith in the Eagles this next season. But I feel like all three of those teams, there's a realistic scenario for all three of them. And, even if Dallas is, as dumb as saying, well, they have the best quarterback, that's the most important position in the game. So I have faith in that.
Yeah, and they have a good offense, too. It's not just quarterback there. So let's move on. Number 4 now. I'm going the Arizona Cardinals. They added some pieces. They added J.J. Watt. They played a tough division. That's maybe why they're a little bit lower. They could have even put them a little bit lower just because of the division they play in. It's tough. It is tough, but I just think there's enough talent here. I think that their defense, to me, looks a lot better. And, their only real weakness, I feel, is you could corner, but they signed Malcolm Butler, which I somehow missed. I found out today that they signed Malcolm Butler. I don't know how the information got past me. So they got Malcolm Butler now. They're working on their defense. And the other issue is kind of their interior defensive linemen. But other than that, I'd say this is and I guess you could argue offensive line. So, but none of those seem like huge issues, and I think that their offense will still be good. I think their defense can be good enough. I'm going to go Arizona here at number 4.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Arizona's really talented, and yeah, I mean, I think they kind of have to start getting this done. If they miss the playoffs again, I feel like questions are going to start being asked. I don't want to give away everything for our next segment, so we'll just leave it at that. I think it's going to be interesting to see. I think that they're a team that needs to take a step forward. The tough thing with Arizona and why I've had them as an honorable mention, and I just think the tough thing, Arizona's facing a downhill battle with that division, which is just difficult because San Francisco is going to be better this season. So basically, I still even if I think they can make the playoffs because I think they are talented enough to, I still probably rate them as the 4th best team in that division. So I just think that makes a really tough sledding to find a playoff spot out of that. So that's the only reason I had them as an honorable mention next season. I think it's going to be interesting, and just why I had them on the outside.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So I guess to Steelman your point more so, if you're just talking who are the 6 best teams that didn't make the playoffs last year going into 2021, they would make your list, but it's a little bit different because of the division.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a huge fan of what they've done this offseason. I think Zaven Collins is going to be really good. Or no, did they get Zaven Collins or Jamin Davis?
No, yeah, they got Collins. You're right. Washington got Davis.
Yeah. I think Collins actually can be a defensive rookie of the year candidate.
Oh, hot take.
And that's mainly just because, not only do I think he's really good, I had him as my number 2 linebacker, but, if Patrick Queen's getting defensive rookie of the year votes, it's clear that some NFL writers just look at stats and linebackers get stats. So that's another thing that goes for him too. So
yeah, there you go. Good point. And hey, with the good edge rushers, they're going to funnel things up the middle. He can get tackles that way. That's a good take.
Yeah, so I mean, I think he has an outside shot for that. And this isn't a great defensive draft, so I think it's
Hmm.
wide open for defensive rookie of the year. So what are we at? Number 5 now?
Number 5, yes. Where are you
All
going?
right, so I'm going back to the AFC here. This is tough because I think one of the things that we look at the AFC is like, so we both said the Patriots, can't make the playoffs, and we both think they will make the playoffs. But I think the biggest question you have for the AFC is where are the playoff spots coming from? Because I think both of us still really like Buffalo. We both, the Browns and the Ravens might have had the two best off seasons. Uh, the Titans, the Colts, we both still like. The Chiefs are still the favorites. And, maybe the Steelers slip up and fall out and the Patriots come in. But then where would the other spot be? That being said, I do think there's a couple talented teams here that could jump up. I had this penciled in as the Raiders early in the offseason. I was ready to bet this, that the Raiders make the playoffs next year. I just haven't liked their offseason of work, so I'm going with the Chargers. I think they've had a better offseason. I think that they have more upside to this team. And once again, I see a realistic path where this team can find a way to 10 wins with a better offensive line, better coaching, and more help for Justin Herbert. I see a scenario with this team and a healthy defense with, knock on wood, pray to whatever football god you want. Hopefully Derwin James is healthy. I think this could be a pretty good defense with a pretty good offense getting finding its groove here in year 2 of Herbert.
Yeah, they were number 4 on my board, going here at 5. I'm absolutely on board. And really, what they did was they addressed the right needs. They went out and they got Corey Linsley. They drafted Rashawn Slater. Like that's the right thing to do. Like they did the smart thing. They didn't do the sexy thing. They didn't. They didn't trade for Odell Beckham. They did the things that you're supposed to do when they were in the situation that they were in. Asante Samuel is a guy who I said, I'm not sure because he's kind of scheme dependent. Well, guess what? It's the perfect scheme for him with Los Angeles. They have so much just sort of this. I feel like I like their head coach and kind of get the offense of talent together and then get a defensive minded coach who can kind of maybe fix some of the holes on defense that could arrive. They're not a perfect team, but they're very good. And I kind of went back and forth with them or Arizona. So, I think they could absolutely surprise some people. And I think we saw Herbert have a really good rookie season, one of the best rookie seasons we've had in quite some time. And it all starts with the quarterback. So I'm on board with this.
Yeah. Plus they signed 2 offensive linemen in free agency, which I think was important. They got a good guard in the draft. And, I thought it was good business too. Instead of overpaying Hunter Henry, let's just get Jared Cook for cheap. There's not a huge drop off there, and this is still going to be a pretty darn good offense. So I like the Chargers next year. I, for a long time, wanted to put the Raiders in this spot because I thought they were close last year with just a little more consistency at the end of games in some different situations. But I didn't love their offseason. I thought that the Chargers had a significantly better offseason.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'll go number 6. So I'm a little disappointed that Miami will not make this list. They were on my regular
That's my
list.
next team.
Yeah. So we each had them just shy. So Miami fans, don't kill us. We'll talk about them in a second. I'm going to go Raiders here at 6. I did go back and forth with the Raiders and the Dolphins as well. I just think that quarterbacks matter a lot, and Tua had his ups and downs. He's a wild card, whereas Derek Carr, to me, is not a wild card. Derek Carr is a really good quarterback. Derek Carr is a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, and he's proved that time and time again. I think their offense will still probably be awesome. John Gruden, for all his faults, he knows how to coach offense. He just does. I think that they will have no issue with that. They still have a pretty good line, even though they made some questionable decisions. Their defense is a huge question mark for me, but I do stand by a good amount of their issues were coaching. They just need to, they have a new defensive coordinator. We'll see how that works. There's sort of a boom or bust factor, but that's kind of why I feel like there is a good chance that this team does make the playoffs in 2021.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I think that team still has really good players. And I still think that they can be really good. This offense was awesome last year, as we talked about quite a bit, and I think that they can be good again next year. They had some bad luck with some one-score games too. So I think that also could correct in their favor. So and they're also 2-6 at home, which is kind of odd. That's something that probably corrects in their favor too. So you see some of the trends saying, oh, the Raiders probably were a little unlucky last year and probably would make the playoffs in a normal situation. But I also think that the problem I had was that I thought they had some holes that they needed to fix and they haven't. I thought there's still a hole in the secondary that I don't think they've really addressed enough this offseason. They're going to say, Morig is going to be the answer to that problems in the secondary. Good luck, because it typically takes rookie secondary players a little bit longer to figure it out. Safety is a little less than corner, but sometimes safeties take a little bit as well. And I still find I just think it's a bad division too to have holes in the secondary when you're playing the Chargers and the Chiefs 4 times a year. So that has concerns for me, and I just wish that they addressed those holes a little bit more heading into the season.
Yeah, I mean, they got Casey Hayward, who I think will help. But you're right. There is some issues there, and again, it's kind of hard to tell because how much of it is coaching. But I also think one way that they've addressed the secondary is by getting Unique Ngakoue, edge rusher, because he'll get to the get to the quarterback quicker. And that honestly is kind of I've always kind of said, if your secondary sucks, sometimes the best move is to just get a pass rusher, because sometimes that'll actually be the better way. It's easier to get one guy than to get 5 guys. So sometimes just do that.
Yeah, and him and Crosby are going to be really fun too.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to be a really good combination. And this team was on my honorable mention. Like I said, I was going back and forth between them and Los Angeles. I just took the Chargers because I like their offseason a little more. But I'm not out on the Raiders, but I just didn't love I didn't love the offseason, and I thought they could have done a little bit more. But we'll see. Maybe they turn some of those things around. Like I said, they had some bad luck in their favor. They had some bad luck against them last year. And if some of that stuff corrects, then, it wouldn't be a shock to see this team at 10-6 in the playoffs. Or I guess it'd be 11-6 now, or 10-7.
Yeah. I don't think I wonder how long do you think until we get used to that? Do you think it'll be
week 18?
Years? Week 18. Okay. You don't think I was thinking it might be a couple. I think next year I'll still accidentally say 10-6 instead of 11-6.
Yeah, I'm not going to get used to it. But yeah, I mean, there is a scenario where this team wins 11-10 games based off of, things going their way this year.
Yeah, and let's talk about Miami now, because I think, Luke Brown very fired up in the chat. Why not Miami? Their offensive line is very bad. I believe Pro Football Focus had them at 30th worst in the NFL last year, and they didn't really do much to improve it other than Liam Eichenberg in the second round. So that's a concern for me. Tua, again, he had his ups, he had his downs. He's not an awful quarterback. We need to let him develop, but there's concerns there. I also think that their defense kind of benefited off of the big play, which just doesn't happen all the time. We saw that game in Buffalo, when Buffalo had nothing to play for, they just completely ripped apart that defense. So it might be a bit overrated. I'm a little bit concerned. It's a star-dependent defense. It really is. And they have some stars. Xavier Howard is awesome. Byron Jones was really good. But there is a little bit of concerns there. They made both of our top 6 lists. So we're both fans of them. It's just a little concerning.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the big thing. I think that the offensive line is a tough spot here. I think people are massively overreacting to Tua in his first season. Now, I get it because he wasn't Herbert, but this is a guy who basically was dealing with, Herbert didn't get a lot of training camp. Tua basically got less, from what I understood, because of his injuries and stuff that he was dealing with. They didn't think he was going to play year one. He was thrown into the fire in a competitive division. I think this team's going to be fine. I think that, even though I didn't love the pick of Jalen Waddle, they have weapons for next year with him and Will Fuller when he comes back and all that stuff. But yeah, the offensive line, basically, it just felt like they're doubling down that Austin Jackson's going to be good. And I didn't really see anything that saw he was going to be good. So that was the tough thing for me to see. But, I mean, we'll see overall. I think they added some interesting pieces. I like Jalen Phillips, too. I think he can put up a big year if he's healthy. But I just think that there's a lot going against them compared to going for them.
Yeah. So I opened up we'll use Pro Football Focus to really to bring this home of what their offensive line looks like. They gave Austin Jackson was ranked 75th out of 79 total tackles. Their next tackle on the depth chart appears to be Robert Hunt. that was their next highest rated tackle, who finished 52nd out of 79. They have their center, Matt Sakura, who is 34th out of 36 centers. Then you also have on guards, you have Solomon Kindley, who is rated 70th out of 80. So you also have Jesse Davis, who is 57th out of 79. So not exactly a lot of high numbers here for Miami.
Yeah, that's a tough look.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't love this team. Thomas Merkel said Dolphins should have taken Sewell. I've been saying this for a month that them and the Bengals are idiots. It's okay. Welcome to the party, basically. I think that's a huge problem. And especially, the Patriots added Judon. The Bills are adding pass rushing help because that was their weakest point. The Jets are weirdly the one team in the AFC East that have a pretty good defensive line.
Yeah.
They don't have anything else, but that's the one thing that they've managed to maintain.
Hey, quarterback.
I mean, yeah, rookie quarterback. But I mean,
right.
So it's like, it's the one team in the AFC East that managed to have a good defensive line, but everyone else getting better. I don't think that's really a good spot that you want to have a bad situation, and especially if you're unsure of your quarterback.
Yeah. The other teams, we'll move off of them. The other teams, Cowboys, we already kind of talked about them. A lot of good stuff on offense, a couple good stuff on defense, not much. Maybe Dan Quinn will help with that. I also have my other two honorable mentions. The Atlanta Falcons, I think, could be interesting. I think they're another team that's kind of all offense. And same thing with Vikings. The Vikings have some issues on defense as well. So kind of both of those two defenses are a little bit question marky. I also don't love the Vikings run first strategy, even how good Dalvin Cook is. I just think that's not how you win in today's NFL. But those are a couple other interesting teams that I could see surprising people.
Yeah, the Falcons were my other honorable mention team. I think they're interesting. And if you're looking at all offensive teams, maybe one side of the ball, I continue to say this. I'm probably going to watch this team every year on Sunday Ticket because I'm interested. The Jacksonville Jaguars are going to have an awesome offense next year. I think, as long as Trevor Lawrence, pans out a little bit, I think this offense is going to be really good next season because they have basically every piece in place. I mean, they're going to give up 45 points a game, but they might score 40. So I think it's going to be a really fun team next year. I don't think they're close to a playoff spot, but they're on the outside. I'm watching them. They're on my radar.
Yeah. With the Jaguars, I did look up their roster and say, is there some? And I'm like, no, okay, no. But I did do that much with them.
Yeah. I mean, I just think, this was a pretty good offensive line, graded up pretty well. And I think that they got a ton of pieces now.
Yeah, no, I agree. All right, let's move on now. Let's talk about, this should be a fun draft. The NFL coaches on the hot seat. I'll start it off with my guy, Vic Fangio here. This just seems like if I have to pick a guy who, the way I view this is coaches most likely to be fired at the end of next season. And to me, Fangio is that guy. I just think that, I don't think the offense is going to be great. He's a defensive-minded coach. I think the defense will be very good. But I just think that Fangio's clear issue in Denver is just he hasn't been able to get the right offensive guys to have success, and I think that could be his undoing.
Yeah, I think it's a tough situation. They didn't address the quarterback either, which I think was their biggest, a big problem for them. They've already had injuries start off this season. It's just a Broncos tradition at this point. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a really tough situation for him to turn this team around, and he's probably someone I would bet on as first coach fired because I think it's a tough situation.
Yeah, exactly. And that's all it is. Let's move on to number 2. Where are you going?
Mike McCarthy. This might be a little bit high, but I think in year 2, especially with, it wasn't just that year 1 was bad and they dealt with injuries. I get it. But year 1 was kind of embarrassing. And I think, Jerry Jones was very loyal to Jason Garrett, because I don't think the team was embarrassing. And just from, everyone's unhappy to this looks like a mess. What is this play calling? The Mike McCarthy specials at the end of games, that kind of thing. Like, I don't think Jerry Jones wants to be embarrassed. So I'm going to go with Mike McCarthy here as a potential out because, once again, this is a bad division. I think Cowboys fans know that this is a bad division they're dealing with. If they miss the playoffs with this team, I just feel like that they're going to have a quick trigger with this one.
Yeah. Counterpoint, Jerry Jones would have to admit he made a mistake if he fires McCarthy.
Fair. That is fair. So
that's honestly, he would have been this high on my list, but I put him in an honorable mention because of that reason. I think that's a legit reason.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is too because we've definitely seen that he's stubborn. So it's a conversation, but I mean, I just don't think that there's any reason this team should miss the playoffs with their offense, honestly.
Right.
So
Right. No, I mean it's absolutely fair. And again, it's kind of it also just goes back to, I mean, Mike McCarthy. The past few seasons that he's had have been abysmal. Like the past 3 years, all missed the playoffs. 2 of which his quarterback did get hurt, and he really was unprepared at handling that issue. I've often said that that's kind of the key way you can tell how good a coach is how well does he do with a backup quarterback, even if, you're going to not do as well, obviously, but kind of how well do you handle that? How well do you look? We saw Kyle Shanahan obviously prove he's still a good head coach. We've seen Bruce Arians have a lot of success with backup quarterbacks. Mike McCarthy's had no success. And the 1 year out of the past 3 that he had a healthy starting quarterback, it was Aaron Rodgers, and he went 6-9-1. So I think it's absolutely fair.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to be seen. But yeah, I have Mike McCarthy here at number 2. Who do you got at number 3?
Matt Nagy. I think Matt Nagy is a clear cut. People are saying that Justin Fields has saved his job. No. This is the classic thing we see all the time. A new head coach drafts a quarterback. Maybe the quarterback does well, maybe the quarterback doesn't. But either way, let's say Justin Fields is awesome, but the team, I think there's real issues in the secondary with Chicago that isn't getting talked about. I don't think this is the playoff team. So they missed the playoffs from making the playoffs. And now they're going to say, hey, we need a head coach who can, develop this young quarterback. Whether Fields is awesome or whether he sucks, people are going to blame the head coach and the only way Matt Nagy is safe is if Justin Fields is awesome and the team makes the playoffs. If it's one or the other, then it's not happening. So he's just there's a lot higher standards for Nagy. Mike McCarthy, Vic Fangio, if they make the playoffs, they're good. Matt Nagy has 2 jobs this year.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting because it is a weird situation where, the GM might be on his way out too, and they draft this quarterback where it's basically like typically the GM drafts a quarterback to get 5 years, and he and the coach might have no years. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all works out, because then you basically have to hire a GM and coach who are ready to come in and take on this situation, not say, oh, well, we want to draft our own guy, because then you're basically stuck with the asset who's depreciating in value, basically. So it's an interesting situation, I think, of how that works out. But, I mean, I made plenty of fun of Matt Nagy last year, so I think my opinions on them are perfectly clear. I don't think he's as good of an offensive play caller as he's heralded to be sometimes. He's maddeningly frustrating sometimes. I think he didn't understand how the strengths for Trubisky and Foles, and trying to put both of them kind of in that square peg round hole thing, which was his offensive scheme compared to them. And I thought it was a bad situation. So I think it needs to improve quickly.
Yeah. Coach of the year, though.
Was he?
Yeah, his first year when they went 12
that's true.
Yeah,
I forgot about that. So yeah, I mean, I wasn't a huge fan of his last year at all.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that yes, the team's won, but I think it hasn't really been. I wouldn't say it's entirely in spite of him, but I don't think it's because of him either. Number 4, where are you going?
Cliff Kingsbury. We kind of talked about this as, if this team doesn't start to see some results, they got a ton of talent that they've invested a lot in with Murray. And, the thing is that getting a guy like Kingsbury was kind of taking that chance anyways. So if it doesn't look like it's working, why stick with it? And it's not just that it's like he's a bad coach. It's that it's just like simple coaching mistakes. It's simple like situational football that just doesn't make a lot of sense for me, where they're throwing downfields on a ton of 3rd and 1s, it seems like, and then they're throwing a bunch of screen passes every other time. So I don't understand a lot of what he does, and I think that, just situationally he has to get better, and I don't know if he can do that in a head coaching role.
Yeah, I do kind of agree. But I think the one nice thing about Kingsbury is if they win, he's fine. So I feel like some of these other guys that are ahead of him, they kind of have to do more than just win. It feels like for Kingsbury, like that is the one plus side. But I agree. He had some issues last year. He got a lot of criticism last year. So when you get criticism and you haven't made the playoffs, you have to make the playoffs or it's done. Coaches don't stick around after missing the playoffs 3 years in a row. So got to get in somehow, or have if they go 11-5 and miss or 10-6 and miss the playoffs, then they'd probably be fine. But it has to have a good season.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's a tough situation for him. Like I said, that division is really tough, but I think that they need to find a way in the postseason.
Yeah. So my next pick, I am going Zach Taylor. Ben Dudelman actually kind of sums it up perfectly right here. Zach Taylor should be on the hot seat, but they kept Marvin Lewis around for so long, so who knows? That's exactly it. He should be number one on this list, but because again, 2 awful seasons as a head coach. I mean, they finished worst in the NFL and then 5th worst in the NFL. But it's the Bengals, so he probably has another 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, he probably he definitely does, because it doesn't. I mean, what they do just doesn't make any sense to me, honestly. Some of their moves just never make sense, and their lack of moves sometimes make no sense. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's a tough situation. I think I have a little more leniency with him. I mean, I don't think he's a great coach, but it was also like his first year was basically like a punt anyways. And then his quarterback got hurt this year. I know they still didn't really win games, but I'm still giving him the benefit of the doubt that maybe he gets a couple more chances at this. But yeah, I mean, I could see him on the way out next year too. So
yeah, exactly. Why don't you finish off the list now? Number 6, where are you going?
I don't think there's a ton of other candidates here. The obvious one for me that could be a candidate is John Gruden. And it seems a little harsh, but at the same time, they've invested a ton in him to be successful. They've invested a ton in this roster, in the moving this team to Vegas. They want to see this team make the playoffs. So I think John Gruden's an obvious candidate for that last team on the hot seat.
Yeah, I get it. Again, we talk about coaches not a lot of coaches get the opportunity to miss the playoffs 3 years and still stick around. Well, John Gruden has been the coach for 3 years and has missed the playoffs every year. So 4 years, that's going to be really tough to justify keeping him, even though I do think he's a good coach. To me, I still stand by, like, the issues with John Gruden are just, don't let him have that much power. You make him just be the head coach. He gets the guys riled up. He covers the offense. You get someone else to work on the defense, and you have a GM who makes the decisions. You can't let him be making decisions because he's not that great with personnel. And Mike Mayock, apparently, I don't know if it's Gruden or if it's Mayock, but whoever's making these decisions, it's not working out. And that's the issue. Like, the offense is incredibly well coached. Just let him do that. Don't have him do other stuff. Gruden would instantly become the best offensive coordinator in football if he was just an offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the biggest problem I think it's when they do these, coaching jobs in charge of player personnel too, there's literally been like maybe one example of this actually working out. And, obviously, Belichick's the exception, not the rule to this. So I don't know why we keep doing this. It happened all the time in the NBA. There was a long stretch of coaches being to negotiate GM powers into their contracts too. And I just never understood it because it never works. And like I said, I think he is a good coach, but and like you were saying, and I think he is a good coach. I think it's a tough situation. And if he doesn't make the playoffs, someone's going to be to blame, and they can't fire the whole team.
Yeah, and I kind of like the baseball approach of just get a good GM and kind of have him run orders down to the head coach as opposed to the other way around.
Yeah, exactly. A manager in baseball basically manages the bullpen. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, and just and is an actual coach, right? Actually, like, helps these guys out with some of these mechanics and the morale and stuff.
Yeah. So I think it's an interesting situation, but yeah, I don't think it's 100% fair, but at the same time, NFL is a results-based league. If you're not winning games, then you're not going to stick around. It's just the way the world works.
Yeah. The other 2 guys are my honorable mentions. I have David Coley, who it's tough to put a guy who just became the head coach. He's the new head coach for the Texans, but I thought the Texans might be so bad. You could see it's just a complete tire fire. They just get rid of him. So I think he's got the honorable mention just because of the situation. And even Pete Carroll, you could maybe see some arguments there. I could see if the Seahawks fall off that he could be on the hot seat. But I think, really, like you kind of said, it feels like there's a 4 or 5 main guys and then kind of guys you could see if something happens.
Yeah, I had Mike Zimmer as my next guy. I didn't want to put Coley on my list, so I just left him off the honorable mention because I just felt too bad about doing it. It's definitely not his fault that he put in this situation.
I agree. Mhm.
Um, I just put Zimmer because, like, if this team regresses again, as much as I like Zimmer as a defensive coach, like, if it regresses again, what do you do at that point? You can't just keep keeping him if the team continually gets worse.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think that's fair. Let's move on. This one probably can be a shorter one. It won't take forever. This should be, I think, the got a fun segment. NFL rookie quarterbacks who are in the best position to succeed. So basically, just we're gonna do six. So there's really five big ones, but we want to do a list. And I'll start this one off. Let's go. I'm going to go Trey Lance, number one. Just again, we're not necessarily saying who's the best quarterback, just what's the best position to succeed, who walks into the best position. To me, Trey Lance, San Francisco, he can sit behind Jimmy Garoppolo until he's ready. He has a great offensive minded coach, a lot of good talent. This feels like an obvious, easy pick for number one.
Yeah, I mean we've gushed about Kyle Shanahan's play calling and abilities as an offensive coach. I think it's a great situation for a lot of quarterbacks to be in. I had him as number one too, which we should also specify. This is like best situation for like the next 5 years. It's not just for this season.
Right.
So I think he is going to be in a great position to succeed whenever he does become the successor to Garoppolo. And yeah, I mean I think it's a great situation for him. So it'll be interesting to see how Lance does there. Number two for me, I had Mac Jones. I just think, we've seen the success this team has had with pocket quarterback passers.
Who was
McDaniels
that?
seems
Did they
the New England Patriots.
the
Oh yeah, that
Patriots?
Tom Brady guy.
Oh,
The
that's
Tom Brady
right,
guy was all
Brady.
right.
Yeah.
So I mean, listen, McDaniels is entrenched in there for as long as he wants to be. The thought is whenever Belichick's done, he's eventually going to take over the head coaching job. We'll see how that works out, but he's going to be in the he's going to be in the offensive system running this for a while. I think it's going to be a good relationship for a number of years. So I'm going with Mac Jones at number two. Just seems like an obvious fit for me.
Yeah, I totally agree. Although Don Levito has a good counterpoint where he says crack Jones and then three laughing crying emojis. Your response?
I have no response. I can't come back to
Yeah, there is no coming back from that one.
that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's very. I think number one or two were kind of obvious. Number three, I am going to go Trevor Lawrence. Now, there's
Yeah.
some issues, like you said, the offensive line's pretty good, not perfect, but pretty good. They have three significantly good wide receiver weapons. They have two halfbacks now with the drafting of Travis Etienne. Who knows how the Urban Meyer whole situation is going to work out. But it's a pretty good situation. Just his offense looks good. The defense won't be great, but in a weird way, that kind of takes some pressure off of him. There's no expectations for Jacksonville to be good, but the offense is still good enough that he can go into a good spot. So, and again, with him being that such a hyped up prospect, if he's plays 5 seasons and is the worst quarterback in the league all 5 years, someone else will probably sign him and give him a chance to start the next year just because of how hyped up he is.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think Jacksonville's a good scenario because, like I said, I'm putting a hefty sum on him to win Offensive Rookie of the Year because it feels just like a shoe-in just with this offensive skill set and how much they're going to be on the field because how bad the defense is. That I think he has a chance to put up huge numbers this season. But the reason why I have him below Jones and Lance going forward is I don't know when this team starts winning. I don't know how long it's going to take for this team to start winning. And kind of like the whole thing with the coaches, it's a results-based league. If you're not, I think he's going to be fine because I think he will put up numbers and I think he's a good quarterback. But if you're not winning football games, then the questions start. And I think it could be a while before the Jacksonville Jaguars are ready to, win football games.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And also, just again, they've kind of been in an inept front office for forever. They sort of bought their way to a 2017 AFC Championship game, which they completely collapsed the next year in doing, and it just hasn't. It hasn't been It's not necessarily a franchise I completely trust compared to some other ones. So there is some questions there, and also one issue too is I think it's a little bit helpful when you don't have to necessarily be the day one starter. He kind of has to be that guy, so that's maybe a bit of a concern, but. You want to go on to number 4 now?
Yeah, so I'm taking your boy here. I'm taking Kellen Mond. Number 4, Kellen Mond for me. Listen, he's sitting behind a quarterback who's basically the quarterback equivalent to White Claw. If you love him, you massively overrate him. If you hate him, you massively underrate him. That's basically who Kirk Cousins is. He's basically neutral for me. And, it's quick to sour on neutral in the NFL, especially at the quarterback position, because you don't want to be, you don't want to be bad. You don't want to be average. You want to be good. So if this team wants to, maybe take a chance on Kellen Mond, I think that there's a good chance that it happens. And if he has to come to this game, he's got a team that runs the ball a hell of a lot with Dalvin Cook. He's going to have Dalvin Cook behind him. He's going to have Adam Thielen at his disposal. He's going to have Justin Jefferson for basically his entire contract at his disposal. I think that's a pretty good situation for a quarterback. I don't love the offensive line, but I don't think it's the worst offensive line in the league. So I think that helps him. I think that he's going to have a pretty good situation from a quarterback perspective if he has to play over the next few years.
Yeah. Well, first off, I personally think that Kirk Cousins is pretty good, not great. I also think White Claws are pretty good, but not great. So I guess that checks out. Maybe I'm the exception to that rule. I think this is a bad take, to be honest. And you know how much I love Kellen Mond. But again, we're not talking about the player. We're just talking about the situation. And my concern with this is just, is he going to get playing time? He might not get to play for years. He might not get to play ever, for all we know. So that's my concern, is I want to see someone who's going to get on the field. So as much as I like Kellen Mond, the player, I didn't even have him on my list just because he wasn't even an honorable mention, just because I want someone who's going to see the field.
Yeah. I mean, I think he is going to see the field eventually. I think he is going to get a chance. Now, whether he capitalizes on it is the big thing. I do think he is going to get a chance, because I do think a lot of these rookie quarterbacks, no matter where you draft it, they're going to get a long look and given a chance. I think he is going to get one. And listen, it may be a little over the top, but I am never going to trust the Jets or the Bears when it comes to quarterbacks. I'm sorry. I think it's always the worst situation. Like, these are the two teams that have basically never had good quarterbacks. So I think that's a tough situation to go into.
Yeah, I get it. But again, I just think, like, if you were a quarterback, what would you rather be in? The Kellen Mond spot or Justin Fields spot?
I mean, I guess throwing to Allen Robinson's nice, but at the same time, like I said, I think it's a little cliche, but at the same time, I think it's a massive amount of pressure to play quarterback for the Bears and the Jets, just because, like I said, these two franchises specifically have basically not had a good quarterback.
Yeah.
And to go in and try and be that guy, and I think the tough thing is Robert Saleh's coming into the Jets, so it's a brand new coach, and it's not really an offensive coach. Matt Nagy might be on his way out of the Bears, so I think that's a tough situation for Fields. So that's why I think if Mond is given the chance, I think he's in a better situation to succeed than playing for the Jets or the Bears.
Yep, I get it. I think there's going to be people in the comments saying, never had a good quarterback. Have you forgot about Sid Luckman? Forget about Joe Namath.
Yeah, I can't wait for like Jim McMahon to come in. It's just like, oh my God, calm down here. Listen, they had like 2 good years out of Joe Namath and Jim McMahon. It's okay.
Yes, there we go. Thank you, Edward. Yeah, number 5, I'm going Justin Fields. I think it's just a better situation than it is for the Jets. It's not wildly better, but I do think it's better. I think that he has Allen Robinson, who's an awesome wide receiver who can make. Robinson's the kind of guy where he makes a bad quarterback look decent because you can just sort of throw it up there. I think there's other talent for Chicago. They added Tevin Jenkins in the draft as well. So their offense is competent. It's not fantastic, but I think it'll be better than people realize around Fields. Their defense isn't as good as it was last year, but I still think that it's an okay issue. And let's be honest, even if Fields struggles to start, A, he has Andy Dalton, so he doesn't have to start right away. So that's a huge benefit. And B, Matt Nagy, he knows how to deal with a bad quarterback too. So even if Fields struggles to start, Matt Nagy can sort of figure out ways to have some mild success. So I'm going with Fields here at 5.
So can I make the case for why Zach Wilson has an easier situation?
Sure.
Because I had Zach Wilson.
Is he your number 6?
Fields was 6 for me.
Gotcha.
Zach Wilson was 5. Gotcha. As I said when I was talking about Kellen Mond, I think there's a good chance Matt Nagy's out at the end of the season. And as we talked about in our coach's hot seat thing, I think he was number 3 on our list. So I think there's a good chance Matt Nagy's out at the end of the season. So that means Fields is coming in basically with a new GM and coach under his belt who, you don't really know how you feel about the guy who's already in the building. Maybe they want their own guy. I think that's a tough situation. And then, Zach Wilson's coming in with a new coach who you're going to assume, as long as it's not catastrophic, the coach and the offensive coordinator are probably going to get 3 years with him. So he's going to have the same coaching staff, you think, for at least 3 years. And I really like what Joe Douglas is starting to do. They've invested heavily in the offensive line early. And regardless of how you feel about Vera Tucker as a prospect, I think Vera Tucker, Mekhi Becton, I think that's a good situation. I think they drafted smart with the running back and getting Michael Carter later rather than going early on a running back. I think that's a good situation, and I really like Denzel Mims. I think Denzel Mims has an opportunity to be a really good wide receiver. I think this is a pretty good situation for Wilson going forward. It's just the Jets. That's why I'm concerned.
Yeah, thank you for the super chat. We appreciate it. I think that's probably fair, and I like Mike LaFleur just because I like his brother. So it seems like it could be in the Kyle Shanahan coaching tree that could take some pressure off Wilson. I do feel like the Jets could use some top end receivers. They have a lot of good number 2 guys. I think they could use a number 1, which Fields has. But that's fair. You could argue. I think you might have talked me into it actually. I think I'll switch it. I'll say. You got me. I'll say Wilson 5, Field 6.
All right. Point for Team Kyle. No. I mean, and the thing is I think the one advantage Fields has is he's going to have a star wide receiver at his disposal. Allen Robinson is going to be a good wide receiver. But that's another question I have is how long is Allen Robinson going to be there? How long is he willing to put up with, working with a rookie or, is there going to be a better situation down the line that Robinson's like, okay, that's better for me. So I just think it's a really tough situation for Fields, especially with they don't have a ton of capital going forward too because they've traded so much of it.
Yeah. Could it be fair to say that maybe Fields is in a better situation for this year, but Wilson's has a better situation for the next 20 years?
I think so. Yeah, I think that's a fair or at least through the rookie contract. If we look at these guys just through their rookie contracts, that's probably where I would rate Wilson higher.
Yeah, I think I agree. All right, so that's it for football talk. We have one more topic, the baseball. We're going to get a little baseball talk here. Listen, we know you're not all fans of other sports. We already did an hour and 12 minutes of football. We usually do an hour-long podcast of football. So if you want to head out here, we'll see you next week, 9 o'clock. But we're going to spend the rest of this podcast talking about baseball. Kyle, you brought this up as an idea. Every now and then we do like to touch on other sports. Why don't you start the segment off?
Yeah, so baseball has a serious problem with their hitting. It's been a culmination of a bunch of different things. As these stats and advanced metrics have advanced baseball, which I think are good for the sport. I think there are some complaints that it makes the game boring. Everything's analytically based. There's no debates in baseball anymore because you could just point to a certain WAR category that's going to have a guy rated better than the other. Stuff like that makes it harder for baseball. I do think it's better for baseball, but here's the problem. The long-going cliche with baseball has been that the hardest thing to do in baseball is hit a baseball. And we've just constantly made it harder on ourselves because we've basically mastered pitching and defense. We've mastered pitching in that we now know that, having a guy going through the order a third time is a monumental mistake. There's just no reason for it. Pitchers pitch 5 or 6 innings to where velocity for starting pitchers is up. A lot of these guys are throwing 95 easily now, where 95 was, a hard throwing righty before in the past. So a lot of these guys are throwing at insane rates as pitchers. They're only going 5 or 6 innings. And then behind them are 5 different bullpen guys who can all throw 99, 100. So there's just a situation where we've mastered pitching and then we've also mastered defense. We now have so much data on these hitters and where they put the ball and the likelihood of where they're going and what direction they're hitting the ball that it's just become a problem. And, I'm not a huge fan of banning the shift, because I do think it's an interesting strategy. But I do think if we were to change one thing, I'm taking the guys off the grass. I'm saying infield players have to play on the dirt because it's way too easy. If a guy hits a hard line drive to right field, that should be a hit. That should be a hit, honestly, in my opinion. Not because a guy is shifting out into right center or short right field. So I think it's a tough situation there. And, the numbers speak for themselves. Currently, we have two teams that are hitting over 260 as a team. That's the Los Angeles Angels and the Boston Red Sox. Currently, we have one team with a strikeout rate below 20%, and that's the Houston Astros. The Angels and the Red Sox, once again, the two best hitting teams in baseball, are at 21.5% and 21.9%. Now, the one exception has been Mike Trout, who Mike Trout has been better than ever once again because it's Mike Trout, and has basically said, he started getting into all of this, launch angle and exit velocity, because basically what happened is these teams started looking at the shift in the way teams are pitching and just said, well, the way to beat the shift is just hit it over them. So they started doing these launch angles, exit velocity. Everybody wants to pull the ball and just hit it as far as you can every time. Mike Trout's hitting a bunch of line drives this year, and he's on base almost 50% of the time, which is just absurd so far. I know it's still a small sample size for baseball standards, but he's still getting on base almost 50% of the time because he's changed his swing back to a more traditional standpoint of more line drives and getting more balls in play that are getting more base hits. So I don't know. I think it's a crazy situation right now for baseball that I think it's great to see a lot of great pitching, but I think we need to make some changes here to save this game a little bit so that's not so awful to watch 10 guys strike out a game.
Yeah, one thing I thought of that I think is a good way of talking about it is when I play MLB The Show, you know how many full counts I get when I'm playing offense? 0. I'm swinging at every pitch. I'm trying to get the ball. That's what's more fun. I don't want to try to work the count. So why are we now? The game has just completely gone away from what is more fun. That's part of the issue, I think. And I'm not sure how much of it is, working the count. But yeah, the huge strikeout is an issue. The fact that everyone comes up. And I actually recently, this past week, I read Moneyball. I reread Moneyball. I've read it before. Listened to it on audiobook, actually. But I say read. You can say that, right? If you listen to something on audio, can you still say you read it?
Yeah, I think it counts.
People don't like to say it, but I always feel awkward when I have to, if I say, this past week, I listened to Moneyball on audiobook. It's just say you read it. Anyway, but, and one of the things they talked about was they like the guys who are patient, and, it's good strategy, but when it comes to baseball, you kind of have to get that out of players' heads using some sort of rule change, because it's not that interesting to watch. So that's part of it, I think, is I want to see guys just swing more.
Yeah, I think it's a big thing too. So I think it makes no sense. And you know what? I've gotten really into baseball this year because I think it's been really fun. I think that they're starting to get more young stars than ever. I think that there's some really good players in the league right now. You look at the two Angels guys in Trout and Shohei Ohtani, who has the prettiest swing in baseball, honestly. You're looking at Mookie Betts. You're looking at Ronald Acuna. There's so many good players in the league right now that it's really fun to watch. I just wish that they would be on base more because they're not trying to launch every ball. So I just think it's a really tough situation. I don't know how it's fixed, but I do think that the first thing I would do, like I said, is taking guys off the grass, because I just think that that's too much of an advantage if you're going to stack the deck like that. I would take the guys off the grass and start that way and, work out more kinks from there, because it is hard to hit a baseball. So why are we making it harder for them?
Well, I like the idea of just banning the shift altogether. I mean, what I like to say is sort of you have to keep two guys on either side of the second base bag, and maybe even create some sort of rule where, you can for one select batter you can change or something just for if there's a select situation where you want to do something weird, you can. But as a whole, I don't have. Why do you have an issue with with banning the shift outright?
I still think there's good strategy to it, and I still think some of it makes sense. But at the same time, I mean, yeah, I guess I could see it.
What about this? How about this? What if you can shift for one spot in the batting order? So, when you have someone who's particularly poles, then you can shift. But for everyone else, you can't shift.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be a good situation. I think that'd be interesting. I know the other thing they talked about in the minor leagues is they're moving, I think in the Atlantic League, is they're going to move the mound back 1 foot. I think that's I don't know how that's going to work. I feel like pitchers are going to be pissed at that pretty quickly, and that's basically not going to pan out. But it'll be interesting to see how I know they're trying to fix a lot of things, but I think that they need to move a little bit faster with fixing a lot of these things.
Yeah. Speaking of move a little bit faster, doesn't the like there has to be a pitch clock, right? I mean, it just has to happen. The fact that I believe they said like it's like on average it takes 25 seconds now for a pitch to be thrown. I mean, I remember even just growing up, it felt like it was like every 10 seconds. Now it's 25. That's insane.
Yeah, I mean, it is not just the pitcher's fault. It's the batters getting out of the batter's box to adjust their batting gloves. Nomar Garciaparra with this whole thing started the whole trend of adjusting your batting gloves before every pitch, which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. So it's just like it's this whole thing that now it's a whole show between each pitch. It doesn't need to be that. Just get in the box and get ready to hit. If you're not ready to hit between waiting for the other 8 hitters to bat, then you're not ready to play baseball. So, yeah, I mean, I do think that's something that needs to change. I think 15 seconds, 10 seconds, it should be something like that.
Yeah. Here's something, kind of a harebrained scheme I thought up of what if now all of a sudden you change the actual amount of pitches that count as the balls and strikes. This is something that, I don't know if this would work or not. Baseball purists would hate it, but now 2 strikes is an out and 3 balls is a walk. Just speeding up the at-bat process.
Yeah, I don't know if that'll ever happen.
No, it won't.
No. I was thinking one thing they also could do is shrink the strike zone, but I'm sure they don't want to see more walks. I think they want to see more hits.
Right. Well, the logic behind creating this, the smaller at-bats is the theory is that guys are going to swing more frequently. And also the theory is that now pitchers can go longer into the game, which I think that's what people want to see is they want to see a starting pitcher be able to go like 8 innings and not have a big issue. And now maybe this could, every at bat basically starts 1-1 instead of 0-0.
Yeah, no, I agree. But I mean, I don't necessarily mind the pitchers being changed. I think that I think the one thing that they have done that I really like is the 3 batter minimum. Because, the Joe Madden special of putting in 3 pitchers for an entire inning was the most brutal thing to ever see. So yeah, I think that, 3 batter minimum is enough. I'm okay with them going, I'm okay with them changing pitchers and I'm okay with them only going 5 or 6 innings. I don't mind anything like that because I do think we're having some really great pitching with these guys only pitching 5, 6, 7 innings at most. You look at the two New York arms and Jake DeGrom, Garrett Cole, they're the 2 best pitchers in baseball. They've been absolutely insane this year. I just think we were getting really good numbers from the mound.
Yeah. Also, I remember growing up, I played baseball, and it used to be like when you were, like what they would tell the pitchers, just throw the ball, try to get someone to swing, try to get someone to put the ball in play. They put the ball in play, then you're winning as a pitcher. Whereas now that's not really the move is try to get someone to strike out. And so I had this other idea that is, again, this is a harebrained scheme. It's never going to actually happen, but just hear me out. It's kind of fun. Once it gets to a 3-ball count, the hitter can swing with no repercussions, which means if they swing and miss and the ball is outside of the strike zone, then that's ball 4 and they walk.
So basically the pitcher has to throw a strike.
Well, yeah, the pitcher has to throw a strike or just walk the batter. But the main reason why they would do this is now the pitcher doesn't want to even get to a 3-ball count. So again, it's kind of, they're going to throw a lot more strikes in theory.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I feel like the one problem would be is that they would just walk everybody then, if they got to 3 balls, obviously, because it's not worth putting up the risk of, I can't walk him or I can't really get him out with an outside pitch. So I might as well just walk him,
Yeah, you might be right about that, but it would be fun.
Yeah, I just think it's an interesting aspect. I think it's still been a pretty fun baseball season. Despite that, it's also fun that my team's in first place, so that's been fun. So, so it's been good overall. I want to see some change to this, where we're getting some, live ball action here a little bit more.
Yeah, I think the big thing is get a pitch count, and then we'll worry about the other stuff. Because get a pitch clock, because that's the clear issue right now.
Get a pitch clock.
Whoa.
Excuse me. Get a pitch clock and ban infielders from the grass.
Yeah. All right. So there you go. You can have those ideas for free, MLB. Actually, no, pay us. Pay us money.
Yeah, because we're the first ones to ever think of these ideas.
Yeah, first people that came up with these ideas. All right. Well, this was a fun podcast, Kyle. I thought that we might have to stretch some stuff out for time, and ended up being the opposite. We ran long, but I thought it was fun. Yeah,
we managed to just talk, so it worked out. It was good conversations overall. it'll be interesting to see how some of these things work out. Who are you betting for first coach fired? Are you betting it?
I haven't planned on doing that yet. I would have to look at the odds, but first coach fired. That's interesting. Probably Vic Fangio would be the guy, but I don't know. There might not be a single coach that gets fired during the season. There doesn't feel like a coach that's a mid-season firing to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. I do think that, I don't know. I just feel like that there's always a situation where something doesn't go well, so they're fired. So I think I'd probably lean Fangio too, but I think it's close. Like, if things start derailing for the Cardinals, is Kingsbury sticking the whole season?
Yeah, maybe not, and maybe I could see if the Raiders start off like 0-4, could John Gruden go? If the Cowboys are like 0-10, does Mike McCarthy go? But it doesn't seem like last year. It felt like, okay, Adam Gase will probably be a midseason firing, and he made the whole season because he got to the point where he was so bad that they wanted to keep him. But he sort of Adam Gase really shot the moon there last year, managed to keep his
exceeded expectations.
Yeah, but yeah, there's none that jump out at me.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think we'll have to circle back to this once the schedule comes out here in a couple days. I think May 12th is the schedule release day. So so I'll have to circle back to this because I could see some trends where it's like, oh, maybe the Bengals have a tough stretch against all those AFC North teams to begin the year. Oh yeah, I could see that ending badly.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do this live on air. Why not? For next week's show, long show. Might as well. For anyone who's stayed around this long. For next show, do you want to do our top 32 starting quarterback rankings? Or do you want to wait on
that? What are we at here? I think that's fine with me. May 16th seems like a good time.
Okay, cool. So everyone, we'll do our top 32 quarterback rankings. We're going to do it draft style. So there'll be plenty to yell at us about next week.
Yeah, I'm ready for all the comments. I got some negative comments for comparing Kirk Cousins to White Claw. So it'll be interesting. I know people are going to get heated about this. So I'm excited to see.
Are you going to be comparing every quarterback to an alcoholic beverage on next week's show?
You know what? I wasn't planning on it, but now that the thoughts now that you've brought the idea to the table, I think I might. So
everyone stay on the lookout for that. Again, thanks to everyone who stuck around to the end. Clearly you're interested in hearing what we had to say, even the baseball stuff. So we appreciate that. We always like talking about other stuff. Make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, and Kyle, let them know where they can find us on Twitter.
Yeah, make sure to follow us on Twitter. That's at Jackson Kruger. Me at by Kyle Grondin, that's Grondin, and at On the Sideline JK on Twitter for any show updates. That's at On the Sideline JK on Twitter. Make sure to follow us there.
Yep. All right. And until next time, have a good one.
Peace.
No, Jameis Winston will not be number one, Ben Noodleman.